Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of No Filter Gen Z. My name is Mariah. And
I'm Camden, sorry.
I'm Elijah.
And today we're going to be discussing transgenderism in America as well as the identity crisis.
Fight, fight, fight!
There's a lot to unpack
There's a lot to go forth with.
What we've seen though is a big change in the last 4 years even.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
With what people view, just the people's worldview and their own identity. So I guess we'll just start with us.
Yeah, it's definitely expanded. I think that Gen Z specifically, we have seen more change here than we have in forever.
Yeah.
I think I've never seen such an identity crisis, and this is not just about transgenderism. I think we have a lot of other issues such as insecurity and comparison, things like that. There's just so much of.
Yeah, and people not knowing who they are, what role they're supposed to, what they're supposed to be.
Exactly. We just talked about men and women in the last episode. Yeah. Stuff like that is also kind of expounding, and I think that's huge.
Yeah. But why is it our generation? Why do you think our generation is struggling with this so much?
Right. What do you think?
I think we struggle with it so much because to me, it all starts with the parenting. And if you look at our parents, they were kind of left home by themselves, not really having that father figure or mother figure. They were both off at work, working hard. And so they grew up not having that. And so they end up over-coddling us. And because we're over-coddled, now we have this feeling that we can be anything and they'll accept us no matter what.
Oh, okay.
And so with that being said, a lot of mental illness now is happening in this country, and gender dysphoria happens to be one of them. And a lot of people, especially nowadays, end up getting that because, like I said, mental illness is just up. I think autism went from, 1 in 100,000, 1 in a million kids to now 1 in every 10,000 kids or something like that, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, or no, it was 1 in every 10,000, and now it's 1 in 30 or 1 in 32.
It's insane.
There's a lot of that going on,
It's way more prevalent nowadays, and it's unfortunate, but we got to overcome it. We got to understand that it is a mental illness, and we need to change. That's the biggest thing, acknowledging.
So just overall, what would you say is the mental illness in general?
Mostly, as of right now.
I mean, transgenderism.
We're talking about that specifically.
I think that's a mental illness.
Yeah.
A lot of people won't say that. They'll say you can be whatever you want, you were saying.
Exactly.
Maybe that is because of how we were raised and stuff. But I also think another factor is social media. We lose who we are because we're comparing ourselves constantly thinking we're not enough. You think you don't look right. You think you're not who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because you're
something
comparing.
feels wrong.
Yeah.
I agree. I actually had some statistics here on social media. So there was one from the CDC. It said the percentage of high school students who use social media several times a day. This is of 2023. So this is kind of where some of this might have started to expand and start. 82% of females, 73% of males who would claim that they use social media several times a day.
Okay.
So that is a ton of people to say, yeah, I would say I'm on it a lot.
Yeah, I am.
A lot, all the time. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of us are. And I think we're seeing so much more being blasted on the social media with the same ideologies of you can do what you want, you can be who you want, and that's who you are.
Yeah. We're
being told that how we feel is who we are.
That's good. I think one thing with Christianity and stuff.
Yeah.
So Christianity is about Jesus. It's about someone higher than you. Yep. But our culture today tells us it's about us. It's about me. If this makes me feel good, I'm going to do it.
Exactly.
If that's, you know what I mean? So I think when we are thinking like that today, of course you're going to have issues because you're focused on yourself.
Yeah.
There's no greater message. There's nothing greater than you in your opinion when you think like that. So a lot of people are going to feel lost and not know what to do.
Ultimately. And when you think about it, what the Bible says is that we can only be satisfied in Jesus.
Yeah.
We cannot be satisfied with ourselves. If we're only looking at ourselves, we will not be satisfied.
Yeah. Yep.
So why do we think people are changing, trying to find an answer, trying to find worth? Because they're looking at themselves. There is nothing to look up to.
They're trying to be God.
There's no Jesus in their life. So when they look at themselves, they're not going to be satisfied, ultimately leading to a spiral. Well, I identify as this now. I feel like this now. This is what they're seeing because they don't have satisfaction.
Yeah, and I go to USF, so I'm in college, and I see on college campus that there's a lot of people who, since they're so moldable now, it's really a lot of peer influence. When you see everyone acting a certain way, like the Pride movement, you might feel like, hey, am I supposed to be a part of this? Like, in college,
it's something new.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe you feel like you fit in there, so you're gonna join that. Since if you don't have God in your life, then you're gonna try to be like the world. You're gonna mold yourself to fit in. Yeah. We know that we weren't born to be like that because we know Jesus. Yeah. But people that don't know Jesus, I can't blame them because they don't know what they're going for. They don't know what they're looking for.
Exactly.
They're trying to fill a God-sized hole in their heart with their self.
Exactly.
And you can't do that.
It's just the next thing. They go for the next thing. It's nothing's actually satisfactory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Elijah? Do you think that people, I mean, how old are you again?
I'm 20.
So, you're not in college though, right?
I am actually in college.
Where do you go?
St. Pete College.
Oh, cool. What do you think? What do you notice there? Anything with young adults, you think?
Well, I'm online, but from when I went to the orientation, I could tell there was some people. I mean, you can generally tell they're pretty open about that, about their appearance. They're unashamed of how they look.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say. Well, I'm not gonna not say there's some weird people. People are looking weirder and weirder. Yeah. I don't. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just more of, again, trying to stand out, be different, do something different. And, like, there's nothing wrong with being unique, but we also have been seeing, for example, men wearing dresses. Yeah. This is not naturally how God created us to be.
I will never get behind that. There's some people that, it's a cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing.
I can't get behind it.
I don't know. I mean, there's obviously different, like, other parts of the world, they wear, like, longer garments.
Okay, but
I feel like that might...
It's different.
It's different.
I mean, if you're thinking of like Scotland, where they wear
the kilts.
Kilts, it's different than a dress. Like
right. But actually, trying to be feminine is the point. Trying to be this just
something
so
you're not.
Something you're not, and I think that has caused a lot of confusion. And ultimately, they believe that that's right for them, and that's kind of where we're getting issues.
Yeah.
So.
And not to mention, in 2020, we had lockdowns. Right. We were isolated.
Yes.
We, as a generation, we were growing up through this. Other generations might have been, like, older, so they were already themselves. Yeah. We grew up through a really weird time.
This was literally the peak of Gen Z's, like,
development. Yeah, we were developing through an isolation where if you're all alone and you can't go outside, you can't go be with people, it's going to mess you up a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and you're kind of left with yourself. And what do we do when we're left with ourselves?
And that's where we see a big rise since 2020, a big rise in anxiety and depression.
If you don't believe that 2020 did not cause any, or if you believe 2020 did not cause any issues in mental health, I can't agree.
That's what started. It was a big spike there because of isolation. These lockdowns were not good for us.
It was not good.
Like the Bible says we weren't created to be alone. That's why He created Eve. So when we're stuck in a place by ourselves, not able to go to church.
Yeah.
You couldn't, like, there was a lot of places where churches were shut down. Mm-hmm. If you can't be with community, you don't know what to do with yourself. You know?
There was a lot that
you get stuck in your own thoughts.
People to be isolated. And that's also when TikTok went crazy. That's when all sorts of social media went crazy. And there is so much that I think has been damaged because of that, because of social media. I mean, there was a lot going on there.
You know something that we see now because of this stuff, because of transgenderism, is boys in girls sports. Yeah. We're seeing males in girls sports winning competitions. I mean, we saw that swimmer in college who beat, was it Riley Gaines? Was she a swimmer? Yeah. So she beat he beat her. Yeah. I'm not, sorry.
Right.
And won the medal. And there's track races where boys are beating girls.
Yeah.
How is this fair? And why is
they are biological men?
Yeah.
There is an issue there. There's a huge issue there. It also just takes away all of the fairness. It is no longer fair.
It's ridiculous.
So I think, and we're allowing this.
Yeah.
Because, they're women. They're transgender. That is a woman. We are now saying that biological men, can be women.
It's insane.
My friends, is...
That's delusion. I'm sorry.
It is. It sure is.
You will never be able to be a woman if you're not a woman.
Yeah.
Vice versa.
And I personally, as a woman, I find that incredibly offensive. Why are people trying to come in and invade our spaces
they're
and
trying
take our spot.
Yeah.
If I was Riley Gaines, it would not look pretty. Let me put it that way, and I'd be really upset.
Their argument is, but they should be able to go into wherever they identify. But sorry to break it to you,
that's not your identity.
If you feel you're something, that doesn't mean it's true.
Exactly.
When I was 4 years old, I wanted to be a fire truck.
Exactly.
Just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah, and we're allowing the feelings to lead.
Yeah.
We know that that's not exactly.
Our heart is deceitful.
Our heart is deceitful, blah, blah, things. That's what the Bible says. The Bible also says, I have a couple of verses. Psalm 139:14. I praise you because I am fearfully, wonderfully made.
Yep.
When people start to believe that they are not enough, they shouldn't be themselves, then we get into the danger zone.
Makes sense.
People start to believe that they are not how God created them to be. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, this is how God made me because that's how I feel. And, okay, let's put a pause on it. Also, not to mention when I was 11, 12 years old, I was like a tomboy. I was outside a lot. I didn't wear any makeup, stuff like that. That doesn't mean I'm a man.
Right.
There are different preferences, but it doesn't mean that you are a man or, stuff like that.
What makes me mad is when it goes into schools and people that are kids that are young developing, and this is what they're doing with young women, with girls. They're going through puberty, and the world is telling them that they're not supposed to feel this way. But that's the whole point. You're changing, you're developing. Yeah. But the world says, no, if I feel a certain way, that means it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because this doesn't feel right. No.
And they're feeding into that
It's
more
all
and
the
more.
feelings like you were talking about.
Oh, well, you must be a man. Maybe you like girls. Maybe you...
Yeah.
And that's not how it works,
Do you see a problem with schools teaching transgender stuff?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's one of my biggest issues with our government. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And that's probably part of the reason why the Department of Education is now gone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
hopefully.
I personally, I went to school with a lot of these people.
Yeah.
Coming from Buffalo, New York. Granted, it was very, very farm town. 10,000 people lived there.
Yeah.
But there was still those kinds of people there. There was still furries. There was still transgender people. There were still gay people. And I had to go to school with them. I didn't treat them differently.
Yeah.
Right.
They were just equal American citizens, just the same as me. I treat them with love. I believe in God. They don't.
Yeah.
And you know what? We got to treat them as such because Christians are we have to hold fellow Christians to a standard, but people who don't know God, they're not morally equipped to follow the same rules that we do. They have their own set of morals.
Click menu.
And so, we can't treat them the same as another Christian. We can't just blast them.
No, that's a good point. If you don't know Jesus, if you're not saved, then you're not expected to, be perfect.
Yeah.
And we're not perfect either. But
nobody
there's
is.
a difference between knowing, who you are because of who God is,
exactly,
and not knowing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because ultimately,
they don't know any better.
Right.
If you don't know God.
Where do you place your identity as a non-Christian? And also, I have a couple of friends that are non-Christian, and I treat them with love and respect as always. But I also get curious, where do these people find their purpose? Where are they placing their goals and their dreams? Are they rooted in the right things? Are they rooted in the Lord and His love? Because the Lord has placed so much love on us as His children, and I sometimes wonder, do people feel as fulfilled? Probably not without the Lord.
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible.
I
really don't.
To be fully satisfied?
I think you can think that and you can try to fill it, but that's why certain things like drugs and alcohol people go to because they need to fill a hole.
Yeah.
But they can't. It leads to down a road of depression because if you're trying to fill that God-sized hole with anything else, it can't be filled.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We were created in the image of God, and those who don't realize that, those who have not read the Bible or just don't conform to it, they hold themselves to a different standard. But I know I find my identity in knowing that God created me in His image.
Right.
That He created me for a purpose, and that purpose is being fulfilled in my life, and I don't need to change the way I look to fill that role.
And that's part of what this generation is doing. They're changing the way that they appear because they feel like that's going to satisfy that. They feel like that's going to fulfill, but ultimately only the Lord can do that.
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that. And I think there's other verses in Psalms too. I wrote this one down, Psalms 103. acknowledge that the Lord is God. He made us. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Yep. And that's where I want to place my identity, like as God's child, as somebody who he loves. So, yeah, I agree with that. And welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry. I had to change the battery of the camera. But no, you guys are absolutely right. But you brought up a good point that we have to treat them still with respect because they're made in the image of God.
Right.
And I heard this good quote about this. It's not a matter of grace or truth.
Yeah.
It's a matter of grace and truth.
Right.
So we can't just conform to the world and say, you're right. Like, you go, girl. You know how people are talking like that? We can't do that. But we also can't just shame them for it because they don't know God.
Yeah.
So it has to be grace and truth. We have to teach with the Bible, show them like what God says, but also be like, okay, we have to remember they don't know God like we do.
Yeah. And I want to be straightforward in my mindset. Like, I don't want to be like, well, okay, I can see your point. Like, no, a man cannot be a woman. Okay, I want to stand in my truth and know that because that is the truth, not my truth.
Yeah, that's the enemy though. That's if someone believes that, that's the enemy at work trying to deceive them. And so we have to stand on what God says.
And that's another thing that I've seen is people say, well, that's my truth. Okay, is truth interchangeable like that? I don't think so.
It's objective. There's only one truth.
Yep. And there cannot be multiple. Right?
That's a good conversation, though. Some people don't think that.
They
think
don't believe that.
Live your truth, Elijah.
Yeah.
Because you want to be a girl. Who cares? Live your truth.
Yeah. But
not that you do, but but that's how they think, right?
And like, if I say this is white, okay.
No, it's black. Like, no, just because I believe that doesn't mean it's true.
Right. Like so, that's your truth.
Yeah.
Okay, live your truth. It can be black. Like no, that's not how it works.
It doesn't work like that.
Okay. There's multiple other scenarios we could do. Some that I probably shouldn't state directly out loud, but you get the point, okay? There's no way to change that.
Yeah, and let's talk about the family, because at the beginning we mentioned how we're raised. In the previous episode we talked about how some people aren't raised with a mom and a dad. Yeah. And I think that it does play a big part in what we end up believing about ourselves when we don't have a foundation of leadership and of nurturing, like we were talking about. Men and women are created differently. When you don't have both aspects, you're missing something. That's why God made man and woman.
Right.
So, I mean, do you guys think that traditional family unit, that nuclear family unit, is the way that we should be going towards?
That is the single most important thing that you can believe as not only a Christian, but as a conservative.
Right.
Just simply because without that, there's no balance.
Yeah.
There is just, you're going to go one way and that's it. And there's no changing that. There's no telling you otherwise. If you're not raised with a father, you're probably going to be a little more on the nurturing side, maybe a little more, behind the scenes, maybe
passive.
You're not taking as much charge.
Yeah. And as a man, that's very important as a man to be that, because if you want to succeed in this society, you have to be vocal, you have to be loud. Sometimes you gotta, grease the squeaky wheel, as some people would say. And I mean, vice versa. Like, if you're too hard and you're too strong, no one's gonna want to be around you. You're gonna be just that really irritating, annoying person who's always grumpy, who's always like, ugh.
Yeah.
So like,
I think masculinity is the problem. Is when men are not masculine, women can't be feminine. They're missing something when we're supposed to be, one. The two shall become one. Yep. When they're missing that, they feel as if they have to play the role of a man. They have to provide and protect when they don't have a man to do that. Yeah. And I'm not saying that women are below men. It's just that we're made differently. Men can't nurture like women can.
Yeah.
Men don't have the same emotional connections as women do. And so, as a man, I see the problem is a lack of leadership in the home.
And you need to give women that space to embrace their feminine side.
Yes.
Because otherwise, it kind of gets shut down. And then that's not healthy either. And I think that sometimes people forget with traditional family values, the way that we're wired is meant for that.
Yeah.
Typically, because we see the man, oftentimes he is the provider. He works, and then the women, a lot of times we see, like, in a traditional value, they take care of the kids and they raise up the children in the household, stuff like that. And sometimes people forget, I think women are literally wired for that. If you think of the hormonal cycle, like, the way that it lines up with how perfect it is to kind of be at home and nurture the kids, it's wonderful. I honestly don't believe we're meant to, like, hustle all the time.
Same thing with men, because men are biologically stronger. for a reason, to protect, to provide, to go out.
Yeah,
to
and
hunt,
every 24 hours they're back up at it. Whereas women, it's like it's a whole month.
Yeah, there's a reason for all
hormonal
this.
changes, which is why I don't believe we were meant to like go get at it all the time.
I think it's kind of funny when people try to act like they know everything when they're like when they're not God, but they try to act. Oh well, no, that's just because we were years and years and years of evolution that we got to this point because we had to.
Just anything to say. To disagree. Anything to disagree.
And it happens a lot, but I mean, back to your point that the traditional family unit of men and women, it's not even that that's still common.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're still being who they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
There's married couples that the men are not men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so.
I was going to bring up this. I've seen women proposing to men.
Yeah, we just talked about that.
There are clips of that on the internet. I am appalled. Absolutely appalled.
I mean, let's just do a hypothetical. What would you do if a woman proposed to you?
Oh, I'd walk away. No.
Immediately no.
The most emasculating thing
that could have
ever happened.
Yeah, it is.
But it just feels wrong, right?
It is wrong.
It just does.
It does.
Because it is.
Because there is a difference in roles for a reason.
Yeah.
And a traditional family value. There's nothing wrong with that. People like to kind of twist things and be like, well, that's just because that's the patriarchy. that's not how it's. Well, okay, I just think we should back up a little bit and kind of realize that it's actually a good thing. This is a good thing that we're turning into this whole issue and ordeal.
And when it works, when the mom is the mom and the dad is the dad. When they actually are embracing the roles, it works. The children grow up with what they need. Yeah. But another point is divorce rates are at all-time high. It's like 50-something% are getting divorced. So, one, why do you guys think that is? But two, what kind of impact does that have on the kids?
I think it's very much so a Christian kind of a topic, because when you look at Christian relationships, Christian marriages, who are true Christian marriages, they don't divorce.
And by the way, marriage is a covenant with God and the whole. I mean, marriage is Christian. Yeah. It's biblical.
Oh, yeah.
That's when it started. So.
Exactly. And, like, you look at all these non-Christian relationships, it's because I'm just not feeling it anymore.
Yeah.
We had a really bad argument.
Yeah, back to the feelings. I do want to put it out there for anyone watching. This is not applying to abuse.
Right.
This does not apply to abuse.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
if you are in an abusive relationship, please do not think you should not get separated if there is something going on.
That's different.
Yeah, but...
That's not even... That brings up, like, that's not a man.
Yeah.
That's
if
also
there's
not
someone abusing someone, they're not a man. They're just a male. They're not a man. You gotta earn manhood. You can't just be a man if you act like that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I agree with you. I think that we have strayed far away from these true values of a covenant. We don't really view marriage as that anymore. I actually had someone tell me the other day, like, well, if you're, like, just casually married in, like, the eyes of God, like, you're good. Like, you don't have to get the government involved and stuff. And I'm like, okay, but marriage is a literal covenant. This is a huge thing, and people are just kind of downplaying it to, like, it's whatever.
Yeah, and our culture does that. Our generation does that.
Yeah.
There's a thing called hookup culture. People just do whatever they want with whoever they want because they don't value it like we're supposed to.
Yeah. They don't view it in the way that God wants us to view it. So that's dangerous too. Yeah. Really dangerous when you stray away from the truth. And the only reason God puts all these things into place is for protection.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. People see it as like this control factor, but in reality, there's actually a lot more to it than that. Yeah. And I think like we're starting to kind of stray away, and I think we need to bring it back to what God wants it to be for a reason.
And it's interesting that the way God designed it works.
Yeah.
People that don't believe in God or the Bible, well, if you take the Bible and read it and look at the values, everything that it says ends up working.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
It's made. We just can't replicate what God created.
Right.
We try and we try to replace it with what we think, but nothing will ever beat what God designed it to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, to get a little political, Trump has been pretty against the transgender insanity stuff. Like in schools, he wants it gone.
Right.
And he also brought boys and girls sports up a lot.
Yes, that is a big one, and that's good.
Yeah, and he is taking away federal funding to the schools that keep that in place. So we actually do, thankfully, have a leader that sees how dumb this is.
Yeah, and dangerous for kids.
Yeah,
I mean,
and girls getting hit in the head with a volleyball by a guy, and when they go into their sports, and it's like they could really suffer brain injuries from that.
I just can't imagine having my child come home from school and saying, "Mom, like I learned today that girls can be boys. Like I don't have to be a girl. Like I cannot imagine that."
It's sad.
And I think that is a horrible slippery slope to go down if we start introducing this stuff.
Well, my mom homeschools my younger siblings, and something that she actually took out of the curriculum, like the state curriculum, was stuff about how you can be gender fluid. Like you can change your gender depending on how you feel that day. And this is even Florida we're talking about. So one of the most conservative states still has this stuff.
That was in their school. That was in their
curriculum. My mom homeschooled them, thankfully, so she just took it out.
Well, I would too, but that's insane.
Isn't that ridiculous?
It's in your educational.
That's indoctrination.
This is just not something that we should be learn. I mean, they're kids too. Like
we wonder why there's so many problems with people growing up when they're taught this ridiculous stuff.
And they're going to grow up and they're going to start thinking that that's okay and
they're going to start thinking, maybe I'm not a guy.
Yeah,
maybe I'm
and
not a
it's
girl.
just confusion. It's just going to add confusion. And we really want to confuse our next generation of kids about who they really are. What a great way to diminish confidence and make them question themselves. Yeah. That's all that really is.
It's what the enemy does.
Yeah.
It's steal, kill, and destroy. If he steals your identity from you, what are you going to do?
Exactly.
You're not going to know who you are, and then you can't do anything.
Right.
And, I mean, the biblical truth is the truth.
Right.
It just stands out so far beyond anything we can think of.
Yeah.
There's nothing above it.
Yeah.
Right?
People seem to forget that the Bible is backed by science and history. They're finding artifacts every single day, pretty much. They're finding genetically that there's one common ancestor. Wow. It's not just bullcrap we're spewing out.
Right.
This is real science and real history that they take out of the history books, keep in mind.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and even the stuff with Palestine and Israel goes back all the way to Jacob and Esau in the Bible. And they were brothers that didn't like each other, even through the womb. And so all this stuff, it literally goes all the way till now. There's evidence everywhere. We just got to open our eyes to see it.
Yeah.
Jesus talked about that. If you just had to open your eyes.
That's insane, though. Yeah. Because it does go back that far, and there's so much that we can prove with the Bible, but it's not being displayed in our...
And it can only do so much, even if there's proof, if people,
actually believe and have a connection with the Lord.
And if they're soft enough to open their hearts to believe it. Because a lot of people have hardened hearts because of all this stuff. They're confused, and they feel, they try to close themselves off because there's so many feelings that they don't want to feel. And when people's hearts get hardened, it's hard to convince them of the truth.
Right, right.
So that's why we still have to lead with love and show we're changed because of Jesus. We're different because of him. And then that's what shows people maybe they do have something.
There's something different.
Maybe there is something different about them.
That's always something I want people to look at me and see the Lord through me. And I think that's been one of my goals in life for a while now is how can I reflect the love of Jesus, especially through, we're doing this no filter episode, right? So how can I lead with grace and truth through all of this? That's something that I think we should all aspire to do.
And by the way, I want to mention it's not loving. A lot of Christians will say that when we're talking about transgender stuff that you have to be loving, but it's not loving to lead someone into a lie. It's not loving to confirm someone's sin.
Right. Exactly. It's loving to display the Lord's grace.
Yeah.
And what's not loving, though, is saying, you're right. That's how you are.
That's just not...
No.
Yeah. It's also not right to blast them for what they do.
Right.
Right. There's both sides of the spectrum.
Loving, but blunt sometimes.
Yeah.
You got to find the medium.
Jesus said, if God forgives you 7 times, forgive your neighbors 777 times. It's so much more because of what he's done for us. So it's grace and truth. You got to have both of those.
Exactly.
Grace and truth. I love that.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching this one. Hope you enjoyed the transgender in America debate and kind of conversation because it's a big issue today.
This is huge.
Click the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.